Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. Good morning again, everyone. Have you ever had the thought that you're too late? Like, too late to debut on Broadway? Too late to write a book? Maybe you believe that you're too old to get married or swim from the Bahamas to Florida. If so, our next guest has a different point of view. And our next guest is Mo Rocca, who so many of you know from his frequent appearances on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me or CBS Sunday Mornings and elsewhere. Mo is with us to talk about his new book, Roctogenarians, Late in Life Debuts, Comebacks, and Triumphs. In it, he chronicles the lives and successes of people from Carol Channing to Colonel Sanders, proving that it's never too late to try something new. And now he joins us to share some of those stories. Mo Rocca, always great to have you on this show. Welcome back to WNYC.
Thank you, Brian. So good to be with you. And thank God I wasn't late. The train was on time.
Yes. If you were late, well, there would have been a price to pay. But what exactly is a Roctogenarian?
A Roctogenarian is someone who does not accept the conventional wisdom that the last third of life is a time to sort of wind down. Because, look, if life is a 3-act play, you don't want the critics falling asleep during Act 3. I mean, we are living longer than ever before. The CDC just said that after a few years of reversals, that life expectancy is on the rise again, will continue to rise. People live long enough to have whole other lives after the traditional age of retirement. And so my co-author, Jonathan Greenberg, and I wanted to tell stories of people who lived these full, exciting lives at a time in life that people would think ordinarily is too old.
And you confess, and we'll go through some examples of people you interview in the book, and we'll invite our listeners to tell us some of their own Roctogenarian stories. But you confess, if that's the right word, to enjoying interviews with older people the most. Why do you love talking to the elderly or senior citizens or whatever term you want to use?
They have better stories. They know who they are. They have more clarity on what matters to them. And this is key. I learned this doing my cooking show where I traveled around the country cooking with grandmothers and grandfathers in their kitchens. They care less about what other people think of them than young people do. The qualities we ascribe to the young actually are, apply more to older people. They're more willing to do it their own way and to go for it.
And your book features several mini biographies of people who triumphed in their last act. But before we hear some of those stories, there's one in your introduction that kind of surprised me. Of all people, you credit Chance the Rapper, a 31-year-old, with changing your perspective on aging. How did that come about?
In 2015, I made an appearance on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, which I'd been on for over 20 years. We were, Chance the Rapper was the guest. The audience was going crazy. It was outdoor in Millennium Park in Chicago. And I had this sort of shticky question that I thought would be an easy laugh. So we were talking to Chance the Rapper about his writing technique. And I said to him, I'm 46. Is it too late for me to become a rapper? And it kind of got a laugh, sort of a hacky joke. And he said, without skipping a beat, totally straight, he said, I don't know. Some people might say it's too soon for you to become a rapper. And people laughed at that as well. But I was thunderstruck by that because I thought, oh my God, I've already fallen into the trap of thinking that I'm over the hill. And I was embarrassed and ashamed when I realized that. And look, my beatboxing is not where it should be. I'm not suggesting that I'm going to become a rapper in my 50s or 60s. But, the truth is that as I get older, I probably will have something more meaningful to say artistically. And I think it applies just to a lot of things. And it's easy to fall into that trap when you're as young as in my case I was, 46, thinking, oh, it's too late.
Mo Rocca with us with his new book, Roctogenarians, Late in Life Debuts, Comebacks, and Triumphs. And listeners, do you consider yourself a Roctogenarian? Now that you know what the word means. Have your autumn years been your best years? Did you wait till retirement from one career to chase a dream, and did it work out? 212-433 WNYC 212-433. 9692. Or maybe you've gradually built up to your greatest accomplishments later in your life, even if it's in a field that you had been in for a long time. Whatever makes you a Roctogenarian, call in and tell your story or ask Mo Rocca a question. 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. Call or text. And I'm curious if Roctogenarians need to only be people who started something new later in life. I'm looking at some of the examples in the book. Frank Lloyd Wright, one of New York City's one of the country's most famous architects, designed the Guggenheim when he was at 80. Thank you.
84, he submitted his first design for it. And, this was towards the end of his life. He died right before it opened. A lot of artists protested what he was doing. They said it wasn't functional. And, 1.3 million visitors a year would disagree. I mean, it's a great icon, of course, of New York in the museum world. Estelle Getty is another great New York example. I mean, this is a woman who, from very early in life, wanted to act. She married at 23, had 2 sons, was living in Queens, doing every bit of theater she could, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway. And when her sons went off to college, then she was able to resume this pursuit full-time. She met Harvey Fierstein. She asked him to write a part in a play for her. She ended up in Torch Song Trilogy, and at the age of 62, she made her national television debut in The Golden Girls. There
you go. And some others, the artist Henri Matisse, the screenwriter Norman Lear, were they both, they didn't start late in life,
They
right?
did not. Matisse really sort of, I think, is an exemplar of this idea of loss into gain, that endings are beginnings. He was already a great established artist, but in his 70s, cancer robbed him of the ability to paint. He was confined to a wheelchair or to a bed. Instead of just giving up, he traded his paintbrush for a giant pair of scissors and began his celebrated brilliant period of paper cutouts. If you go to MoMA, of course, you can see the swimming pool and other examples of this. And part of what I love about this story is it was kind of a return for him to sort of a childlike state, because the paper cutouts, represent a fascination with bright colors and big shapes. And I think that's the case in a lot of these stories. But Matisse himself called it a second life that he was enjoying.
Gregory in Harlem, you're on WNYC with Mo Rocca. Hi, Gregory.
Well, hi, Brian. Long time, all the time. Hey, listen, man, I am 78 years old. About 18 years ago, I was told I was a writer, producer, copywriter, all of those things, and in the advertising world. And so people kept telling me I'm too old to be creative. About 6 years ago, I started my fashion design company, and I make awesome bow ties, and I just love the fact that I can prove for myself that I am no longer a septuagenarian. I am a Roctogenarian.
Oh, my God, Gregory, this is great.
I rock that. So thank you so much, Mo and Brian. I'm going to continue. This is great.
And can I just say...
Go ahead, Mo.
Gregory, this is fantastic. But let me just say quickly, first of all, I bet you rock the bow ties. And I should say that I do, too. I tie my own bow tie. And might I also add, 78 is also the age of Samuel Whittemore, who fought on the very first day of the American Revolution in the battles of Lexington and Concord. He had his face blown off. He was stabbed in the head by a redcoat, and he kept fighting. And that's the spirit we all need.
Well, thank you very much, Mo.
Thank
you, Gregory.
Hey, listen, can I give you my address? I'll send you a bow tie, man. I have the greatest bow ties on the planet.
We'll take it. We'll take his mailing address off the air.
We'll figure that out later. Thanks, Gregory.
Hang on, Gregory.
Yeah.
We'll take it off the air.
I love a good paisley. A paisley is really great, too. Thank you.
Diana in Chatham, New Jersey. Our second call from Chatham today. You're on WNYC. Hi, Diana.
I'm hot in Chatham.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you, Mo. I love Mo and all his work, including Wait, Don't Tell Me. I got super lucky at the age of 63 when my horrible boss merged the small accounting firm I was managing with a bigger one, and I went back to my original career. So now I am so lucky at the age of 80. Yesterday, for example, I drove all the way from Chatham to Norristown, Pennsylvania to work in court. And I work as a judiciary translator. I translate between French and English in the court system. And I've been to Africa several times for the State Department as an interpreter. So I'm just super lucky. I have no plans to retire. But lucky for me, I can pick and choose which work I decide to do. And I'm just feel super lucky. And thank you, Mo, for the term. I love it. I'm definitely a Roctogenarian. Thank you.
You are a globe-trotting Roctogenarian, Diana. This is so exciting. You are living your life. And I don't think you're lucky. I think, well, you made your own luck. But this was your doing. And can I say, you mentioned Africa. I'm thinking of Jane Goodall, who is in the book, and she's a great Roctogenarian. And Diana, just the very name, Diana Nyad, who tried to swim from Cuba to Florida at the age of 28. It didn't work out. 30 years later, she tried again and again and again and succeeded at 64.
And that great movie last
year. She is such a wonderful role model, and she is my role model. And starting next week when the open air pools, I'll be swimming hour-long laps every weekday. Because in the winter I swim indoors at the YMCA in Summit. But yes, and I thank you for the idea that we make our own luck. I believe that. Yes, you're right.
We're starting a whole new identity group here, Mo. And Roctogenarians.
And can I just say that Diana is a young 80, which makes her 10 years younger than Mr. Pickles, the Houston Zoo tortoise, who became a first-time father at 90, because we do include personal milestones as well.
T in Williamsburg, you're on WNYC. Hi, T. T, do we have you? You may have to turn down your radio if you're hearing us on delay and you don't know we've gotten to you yet. All right, we'll try T again in a minute. Bob in Bay Ridge, you're on WNYC. Hi, Bob.
Hey, guys. Good morning. It was a fascinating interview, and I loved the term Roctogenarian. I can totally relate because I played music as a kid, and then I had my time to go to college and have my career, and I got married and bought a house and everything, and I didn't start playing music again until I was in my 50s. And now I have a rock band at the age of 63. We're finally achieving some success. We're getting paid gigs. We're well known in the scene. We hang out at punk rock clubs all the time. And I'm living a lifestyle that I only fantasized about as a kid and thought I would never achieve. And I'm kind of just shocked in my old age, I guess you would call it, at 63. I'm close to retirement age, and I'm living the life that I fantasized about as a teenager and still have my career and still have my family and still have my mortgage to pay and all that stuff. So I'm doing both.
Bob, I just have two things to say. Number one, my father took up the trumpet when he was close to 50, okay? And then he played in a Dixieland jazz band for the rest of his life. And I think it was so artistically fulfilling. If you do it, if you don't fantasize about it, just do it. And can I also say that in the book is Ruth Slenczynska, who was one of the world's great child prodigies, a pianist. She was the Shirley Temple of classical music, but she had a harrowing childhood. She is now in her 90s. She's now 99, and she returned to playing, and she told me when I interviewed her on CBS, she said, you don't become a real musician until after the age of 60, which I thought was so fascinating. She said the notes are the same, but the stories are different. And also I should point out that Brian May, the great guitarist for the band Queen, is sort of the reverse of your story in a sense. He was studying astrophysics, and then, of course, went off in became a very different kind of shooting star, became a Hall of Fame guitarist, then went back to school and earned his PhD in astrophysics at the age of 60.
I follow his story very closely. My daughter's a big fan of astrophysics, so between Brian May and myself, she gets both of her interests ameliorated.
Bob in Bay Ridge at 63, now in a rock band, a Roctogenarian rocker. Bob, thank you very much. What's interesting to me about the artist, so this has always been interesting to me. Some musicians or other artists, they burst upon the scene maybe in their 20s, and they do their best work then. And then they kind of repeat themselves over and over again, or even become explicitly nostalgia acts. other people develop and develop and develop. Miles Davis from the jazz world just kept changing and growing. Beethoven, I think, is an example. I think people would say his Ninth Symphony, which was his last, was at a whole other level from his First Symphony. Not that his First Symphony wasn't wonderful. But some artists of whatever genre develop that way. A lot kind of do their creative work when they're young, and then they don't grow with age. Have you looked at that dynamic?
Well, I mean, part of it in this section of the book called Loss into Gain is how endings can be beginnings. And I'm not saying that to grow you need to lose something, but it does seem that it can be unexpectedly, I guess there's no other word for it, helpful. Borges, the great Argentinian writer, really wrote short stories, ficciones. And then as he lost his sight in his 50s and 60s and then became blind, that's when he turned to poetry because he could compose verse in his head. And it opened up a whole new world and a whole new chapter of his creative life. So I suppose a lot of it is just about pushing through and against these challenges and limitations and finding whole new worlds. Look, I love nostalgia acts, and there's one particular singer, and I won't name him because it will sound like I'm knocking him, but for 30 years he's been doing the same songs over and over again. And I saw him in concert at Madison Square Garden. I'm not talking about Billy Joel, who's amazing, but you know, of course I have special admiration for the people who keep changing.
Yeah, and maybe, since you cited the author, maybe there's something about writing. I don't know, I'm just thinking this thought now for the first time. Maybe there's something about writing where experience leads you to better and deeper work over time that's different from music, let's say.
I think that may be the case. And in the visual arts, you know, Matisse also talked about a lack of complicatedness in his work at the end and sort of a return to a kind of simplicity. I think with the writers in the book, we include Frank McCourt, the great Frank McCourt, who for all of his life doubted that his story was worth telling, which I find to be one of the saddest things when any person, they don't have to be famous, obviously, when any person thinks that their story is not worth telling. But Frank McCourt ultimately decided that it would kill him if he didn't get this story out. And he finally said, it took 2 years and all of my life to write my memoir, Angela's Ashes, which was published when he was 66 and was a literary sensation. Laura Ingalls Wilder also, the first of her 8 Little House books, was published when she was 65. Her life after her childhood was one of extreme poverty. And her daughter, who herself was a controversial figure and deserves her own sort of chronicle, but her daughter gave her great advice, which is she said to her mother, write as if you're writing just for yourself, as if it's a diary. And I can't think of better advice.
We're running out of time, but I want to give T. and
No, we're not.
Williamsburg.
That's the point, Brian. We're not running out of time. We've got lots of time.
I missed the entire premise of this segment. T. in Williamsburg, we'll give you another shot here. You there?
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good. How are you?
What a milestone to speak with you. Hi. Yes, I am 52, and I am currently in the New York City Parks and Rec lifeguard training program, which is insane, but I can't believe I'm doing it.
You're the Diana Nyad of lifeguards.
I did watch that recently. It was inspiring. I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest person in the program. I haven't asked, and I don't think anyone really knows how old I am, but I mean, other than maybe the instructors, but I don't think my fellow classmates who are in their teens have any idea that I could be their mom or grandma. But yeah, I'm doing it. It's happening, and I still have 4 more classes and a CPR course, and then I have to take a bunch of tests to see if I pass.
So why lifeguarding for you at your age?
Well, I swim a lot. I'm an avid swimmer, and a bunch of lifeguards that I sort of became friendly with at a pool I swim at in the summer sort of asked me, why don't you try doing this? And so I signed up online, and I didn't think I would actually do it. You have to do a qualifying test and an eye test. So I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm going to pass either of those. But I somehow did, and I just kept passing each thing. And then the next thing I knew, I was in the course. And I was like, it's like been a whirlwind and like very humbling, very exhilarating. but humbling mostly.
Listen, but T, I just have to remind you that Snowman, otherwise known as the Cinderella horse, the great show jumper, was Horse of the Year at age 11, which is like 500 in human years.
What a milestone. I love that. This is a great episode of your show. I'm really inspired. Thank you so much.
T, thank you very much.
Thanks,
if I'm
T.
ever drowning off the Rockaways, I want you to save me because it sounds like you really care and you're going to be really good at it.
Really?
So, T, thank you very much. And there we're going to have to leave it with Mo Rocca, whose latest book is called Roctogenarians, Late in Life Debuts, Comebacks, and Triumphs. Another triumph for you, Mo. Thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Brian. And remember, I'm a fan of yours at every stage of life.
Thank you. And ditto. Brian Lehrer and WNYC. More in a minute.
I'm David Remnick, host of the New Yorker Radio Hour. There's nothing like finding a story you can really sink into that lets you tune out the noise and focus on what matters. In print or here on the podcast, The New Yorker brings you thoughtfulness and depth and even humor that you can't find anywhere else. So please join me every week for The New Yorker Radio Hour, wherever you listen to podcasts.